In the second year after I helped my wife Sophia make a comeback, she threw a divorce agreement at me, all because she had fallen in love with someone else, and wanted to buy out our 2-year marriage with $5 million. Sophia thought I would be unwilling, that I would cling to her, but to her surprise, I signed swiftly, turned around, and left without looking back. I never told Sophia that the little boy toy she was keeping had long been plotting to drain her company dry, and the money I had made from her these past 2 years, plus this hefty divorce sum, was already enough for me to lie flat and enjoy an easy life. When she went bankrupt again and came back to beg me to pick up the pieces, she was shocked to discover the wealthy woman I had fattened up back then was not her alone. Main text. When Sophia slid that divorce agreement across the table to me, her newly promoted little secretary was leaning lazily against the doorframe. The corners of his mouth curled in a sneer he didn't bother to hide. That look, like he was sizing up an old piece of furniture about to be thrown out, carrying a contemptuous finality and an eagerness to get it over with. The cold white glare of the chandelier lit Sophia's carefully maintained face, carving out the sharp edges of someone used to the negotiation table. What her fingers pressed down on wasn't just a few sheets of paper, but a certificate worth buying out our marriage of 2 years, a check for $5 million. Sign it. Sophia's voice was flat, like she was finalizing a routine contract clause. Her fingertip tapped lightly on the check, producing a faint ticking sound. Give him a title. This money is enough for you to live comfortably for several lifetimes back in that little town of yours. She didn't even look at me while she spoke. Her gaze remained on the agreement, as if she were confirming some irrelevant number. The air carried the lingering chill of her usual expensive perfume, mingled with the deliberately flaunting scent of youth from her secretary, a mixture that proclaimed victory. I leaned back on the sofa, my gaze shifting from Sophia's indifferent profile to the young man's unabashedly smug expression by the door, and finally landing back on the agreement and the check. $5 million. 2 years. $100,000 of pocket money every month. A pure investment return. Not bad. I even chuckled faintly, just enough for me alone to notice. Pen, I said. Sophia clearly hadn't expected me to be so decisive. Her fingertips paused for an instant. Then she lifted her eyes and gave me a quick glance. In that glance flashed a fleeting sense of, at least you know your place. Before returning to her usual businesslike indifference, she tilted her chin slightly. The secretary immediately straightened up, plastered on a servile smile, and stepped forward. From the inner pocket of his pricey suit, he drew out a Montblanc pen and handed it to me, his gesture tinged with condescension. I took it without looking at him. The cool metal of the pen brushed my fingers. I opened the agreement, flipped straight to the last page. The signature line was blank, waiting for me to end this 2-year farce of a marriage that had always been an investment. Sophia's name was already there, bold and assertive, carrying her usual air of control. The tip of the pen scratched across the paper with a steady hiss. My name was signed quickly and firmly. The last stroke fell, final and complete. Sophia seemed to let out a breath, the tension in her jaw loosening slightly. She picked up the agreement, confirmed the signature, then pushed it back to me along with the check. I folded the check and slipped it casually into my pocket. The piece of paper was light, weightless almost, yet it carried the heavy declaration of freedom in ending this chapter. Sophia. The secretary immediately latched onto her, slipping his arm naturally around Sophia's waist. His voice dripped with syrupy sweetness. Everything's taken care of. Tired. I booked your favorite Japanese place for tonight. Sophia didn't push him away. She only gave a faint letting him half embrace her as they went upstairs, without sparing me even a glance. Her high heels struck the polished marble staircase, each crisp, hollow echo carrying her step by step away from this home where she had never truly stayed. I sat unmoving on the sofa, listening to their footsteps ascend, faint laughter floating down, followed by the soft click of the master bedroom door closing. In an instant, the vast living room held only me and the cold, expensive silence. The chandelier's light was still harsh, making the imported Italian furniture and abstract paintings on the wall glow with a detached, unreal sheen. This place had never been a home. It was more like a luxury hotel suite, and I, just a long-term tenant whose lease had now expired. I stood up without turning on the lights, letting the neon glow from the city outside guide me as I walked into the guest room on the first floor that had always been mine. The luggage was already packed. Sitting at the foot of the bed, a huge hiking backpack. Inside were just a few worn clothes, a handful of books, a laptop, and an old wallet I had carried for years. The things that truly belonged to me were pitifully few. Those designer clothes, watches, and accessories Sophia had people deliver regularly, I had never touched them. They stayed quietly in the walk-in closet, belonging to this space, not to me. Unzipping the innermost pocket of the backpack, I slid in the folded check, placing it beside an old yellowed photo. The photo showed my parents, standing in front of the old family house, smiling warmly. The check's icy texture pressed against the photo's fading warmth, creating a strange contrast. I shouldered the backpack and opened the door. The living room remained empty and silent. I cast one last look at this gilded cage. No attachment. Then I turned and left. The heavy security door closed behind me with a dull click, sealing that world away completely. The late autumn night wind rushed at me, sharp and bone-chilling, blowing away the last traces of perfume lingering in my nose. I drew in a deep breath of the cold air, my chest clear, my mind sharper. Pulling out my phone, I ordered a car. The ride arrived quickly. The driver was a quiet middle-aged man. Seeing the huge pack on my back, he casually asked, "Catching a train, young man?" "Yeah." Sliding into the back seat, I set my backpack down and said, "To the high-speed rail station." The car merged into the city's late-night traffic, still ceaseless. Outside the window, the dazzling city lights streamed past in retreat, skyscrapers looming in the darkness like slumbering beasts. This was Sophia's world, a world of ambition, speed, and cold rules. I had only lingered on its edges briefly, like a bystander. My phone lit up with a message from Sophia's secretary on WeChat. I opened it. Just a photo. It showed him and Sophia, in the dim lighting of a bar booth, his arm slung around her shoulder. He flashed a tacky V sign at the camera, his face brimming with unrestrained pride and provocation. Beneath it was a line of text. "Thanks for making it happen, Mr. Wong. From now on, Miss Sophia and I will be happy together. You can just enjoy your retirement." The lighting was dim, but Sophia's expression was clear, her smile was relaxed, even indulgent. It was a look I had never once seen on her face with me. With me, she had always been like someone fulfilling a serious contractual duty, efficient, precise, without an ounce of surplus emotion. I stared at the photo. No anger, no jealousy, only a settled calm, as if dust had finally settled. In fact, I even found it a little funny. My finger hovered over the screen for a moment. No reply, no deleting the chat either. Instead, I opened the contacts, found the name, Sophia, long pressed it, and hit delete. The action was crisp, decisive, without the slightest hesitation. After that, I slid the phone back into my pocket, leaned my head against the cold glass window of the car, and closed my eyes. The world quieted, leaving only the monotonous sound of the wheels rolling over the pavement, like a hypnotic drumbeat. The high-speed rail station was ablaze with light, still crowded even late at night. On the massive electronic display board, red characters scrolled continuously. I collected my ticket and walked into the waiting hall with my backpack. The air was thick with the greasy scent of fast food, the sharp tang of disinfectant, and the weary aura radiating from countless travelers. A woman's voice echoed over the loudspeaker, crisp and precise, announcing train schedules. I found a seat in a corner, set my pack down by my feet. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a bank notification. A transfer had just landed in my personal account, 5 million. The remark line carried only a cold single word, compensation. Staring at that string of staggering numbers, a strange feeling slowly rose in me. Not wild joy, but the lightness of finally laying down a heavy burden. This check, along with the monthly allowance Sophia had been transferring me over the past 2 years, and the steady returns from my parents' compensation money I had invested carefully through the years, all of it formed my ticket to freedom. They lay quietly there, like solid stones paving a road toward the future I had already mapped out long ago. Ding dong, attention, passengers. Train GXXXX to XX is now boarding. The broadcast rang out. I stood, swung the heavy backpack over my shoulders, and blended into the crowd heading toward the gate, through the turnstiles, along the long platform passage, until finally I stepped into the carriage. I found a window seat and sat down. Outside were the platform's bright lights and the rushing figures dragging suitcases. The train began to move. Smooth acceleration. The platform lights retreated rapidly, shrinking, swallowed by darkness and the scattered city lights in the distance. The glass reflected my own blurred silhouette, calm, and even carrying a hint of relief. I pulled my backpack onto my lap, unzipped it, and checked once more that the check and my parents' photo were both there. My fingertips brushed the photo's edge, carrying a faint trace of warmth. Then I reached into the side pocket and pulled out another item, a small, palm-sized notebook with frayed, worn edges. Its dark brown cover was plain, without decoration. Opening it, I saw my parents' handwriting, neat and clear. Not a diary, more like a simple yet meticulously detailed life manual. The first half was household accounts, precise to 2 decimal places. Every income, every expense, even the price of a single pound of vegetables, all recorded. The second half was their accumulated insights and little tricks on investments over the years, practical, sharp-eyed, sometimes uncannily prescient. How to tell if a project was reliable. How to read people, look at their eyes, their hands, their expression when they spoke of their goals, whether empty or real. How to stay calm in market fluctuations. How to calculate the balance of risk and reward. The words were plain, without lofty theory, yet full of survival wisdom distilled from a lifetime of hard work. They weren't financial tycoons, just two ordinary people who had labored diligently in a small city their whole lives. This notebook was their simplest attempt to leave me, their only son, a survival safeguard. It was the root of all my investments. Without it, there would have been no money to support Willow back then, and certainly no decisive, angel investment I had thrown at Sophia. My fingers gently brushed the familiar writing, those down-to-earth maxims about reading people, carrying the warmth of my parents' presence. Sophia. Willow. Two entirely different faces flickered through my mind. I remembered Sophia sitting across from me, gaunt, her gaze like ashes hiding sparks that refused to die, speaking of failure with a terrifying calm, no complaints, only analysis and review. And Willow, my memory suddenly pulled me back to many years ago. That sweltering September afternoon, the sunlight was blindingly white. Inside the little restaurant behind the university, run by Auntie Chan, the old ceiling fan spun uselessly overhead, stirring the heavy, sticky air. I had just finished the first day of freshman classes. Sitting at my usual corner table, I spread open my calculus textbook and notebook, my pen scratching across the paper while my mind drifted elsewhere. After my parents' passing, this small restaurant and the compensation money in the bank had become my only anchor, my sole focus. The glass door pushed open, letting in a gust of even hotter air. A figure stepped in, hesitant. I instinctively looked up. It was a girl, not tall, so thin she looked like she might be blown over by the wind at the door. She wore a faded t-shirt washed nearly white, jeans just as worn, and canvas shoes scrubbed pale. Her hair was tied in a simple ponytail, a few strands at her temple damp with sweat, clinging to her skin. Her face was drained of color, her lips dry, but her eyes were startlingly bright, carrying a careful stubbornness and a shy unease she could barely conceal. She lingered at the entrance, her gaze darting quickly around the cramped dining room, as though searching for something. Finally, her eyes landed on Auntie Chan behind the counter, wiping down dishes. The girl drew in a deep breath, as if summoning every ounce of courage, and stepped forward. Her footsteps were light, almost timid. Auntie. Her voice was soft, tinged with the lilting accent of the South, yet clear. "Excuse me, are you still hiring here?" As she asked, her fingers twisted the hem of her faded t-shirt tightly, knuckles whitening from the strain. Her head bowed, eyes fixed downward, too nervous to meet Auntie Chan's gaze. Auntie Chan paused, lifted her head, and gave the girl a quick once-over. The restaurant was quiet, save for the fan's monotonous hum. "We are hiring," Auntie Chan said at last, her tone brisk with the straightforwardness of a local. "But the work's no easy ride. Serving plates, washing dishes, wiping tables. When it gets busy, your feet won't touch the ground. Pay is by the hour. Not much, but it includes one dinner. Can you handle it?" The girl's head bobbed instantly, like a pecking chick. A light of desperate hope flared in her clear eyes. "Yes, Auntie, I can. I can do anything. I don't mind hard work." Her voice was so urgent it was almost a plea. "You're a young one, aren't you? Just started university?" Auntie Chan set down the rag and leaned against the counter to ask. "Yes, a freshman," the girl answered softly, her head dipping even lower. "What about your family? They okay with you working?" "School just started." The girl fell silent, her fingers clenched tighter at her shirt hem, twisting it until her knuckles turned bone white. It was several seconds before she replied, her voice lower, thinner. "My tuition. I earned it myself. Over summer break. Travel expenses, too." She hadn't said whether her family agreed, but the answer was obvious. Auntie Chan sighed, her expression softening. She was about to speak when I closed my textbook and stood up. "Auntie Chan." I walked to the counter, my eyes settling on the frail girl. Sensing me approach, her body stiffened, her head lowering further, leaving me only a tense, uneasy profile. "George." Auntie Chan turned to me. "What do you think?" I nodded once and asked the girl directly. "Which department? What's your name?" She startled, her bright eyes lifting suddenly to meet mine, filled with surprise, tension, and a faint trace of guarded wariness. "Computer science." "Willow." Her voice was soft, but the words were clear. "Willow." I repeated the name, without much emotion. "The work here isn't easy, but Auntie Chan is kind. Come after classes if you're free. Wages are paid on time. Meals included." My tone was flat, like I was stating the most ordinary fact. Willow froze. Those clear eyes widened, staring at me in disbelief, then flicked to Auntie Chan as if she couldn't understand why everything had been decided so suddenly. Auntie Chan laughed and clapped her hands. "All right then, girl, you're in. Can you start today? It's not busy right now. Perfect chance to get familiar with the place." Surprise and joy flooded Willow's pale face, bringing a flush of color to her cheeks. Her eyes shone brilliantly as she nodded furiously. "Yes, I can. Thank you, Auntie. Thank you, Senior." When she looked at me, Her gaze brimmed with pure gratitude, so overflowing it was almost tangible. I answered with a brief said nothing more, and turned back to my corner seat, reopening my calculus book. From the corner of my eye, I watched as Auntie Chan showed Willow around, where the rags were kept, where the dish soap was, how the dishes should be stacked. Willow listened intently, nodding again and again. Every movement carried a careful reverence, as though this opportunity was the greatest gift she could have received. Outside, cicadas droned loudly. The old fan kept on buzzing overhead. My pen returned to the page, working through complex formulas, but somehow, I felt steadier than before. This investment looked low risk. The return, maybe it was simply seeing someone who worked so hard suffer a little less. The gentle sway of the train pulled me back to the present. Outside the window, blurred fields and scattered village lights sped by. I closed the old notebook that carried so much of the past, tucking it deep into my backpack. Sinking into the soft seat, the fatigue of the journey washed over me. My eyelids grew heavier and heavier. Before consciousness slipped away, one final thought crossed my mind. Almost there. So close. That place with just a few tiled houses, a small yard, where I could plant vegetables, fish by the river. The clattering rhythm of the wheels on the tracks went on, until a clear female voice announcing the next stop cut through the haze of sleep. Now arriving at Rising Sun Station. Passengers, please prepare to disembark. Rising Sun. The word seemed to carry a kind of magic, sweeping away every trace of weariness. My eyes snapped open, my body straightening instantly. Outside, dawn carried the gray light unique to late autumn. The morning sun still struggling to break through thick clouds. The platform, aged and simple, emerged from the mist. The station sign bore two large red characters, Rising Sun, standing stark against the pale background. Even the air was different here, fresh with the scent of earth and grass, worlds apart from the city's exhaust and concrete. I slung the heavy backpack over my shoulders and followed the trickle of passengers out of the carriage. The cold wind struck my face, damp and biting, yet it invigorated me. Rising Sun Station was small, its platform worn, facilities bare, with only a handful of staff. Outside the exit was a modest square, where a few battered three-wheeled taxis idled. The drivers, bundled in thick cotton jackets, hands stuffed into sleeves, cast indifferent glances at the passengers. Boss, going to Small River Village. Will you take me? I stepped toward the nearest one and asked. The driver was an old man with graying hair. He gave me a once-over, probably noting that my heavy pack didn't make me look local, though my accent carried hometown roots. He nodded and named a price. 20. All right. I pulled the door open and climbed in. The cab reeked of cheap tobacco mixed with motor oil. The leather seats were cracked and peeling. The three-wheeler sputtered to life, belching a puff of black smoke before rattling its way out of the station square and onto the bumpy county road. On either side stretched the empty fields after harvest, the soil bare and yellow-brown. In the distance, rolling hills rose, trees painted in the variegated colors of late autumn, reds, yellows, and greens blending in the morning mist like an ink wash painting. The air was sharp and clean, carrying the earthy tang of soil and the faint sweetness of grass and leaves deep into my lungs. Every so often we passed a small village. Thin plumes of cooking smoke curled above rooftops, mingling with the occasional bark of a dog or crow of a rooster. A long-lost sense of peace seeped slowly into my bones. The alienation and coldness of those past 2 years in the big city, in that luxury apartment, felt like an invisible shell, now peeling away under the touch of this rural wind. After nearly an hour of jolting along, the rickety tricycle stopped at a fork in the road. Small River Villages here. The paths inside are too narrow. Can't drive in. The old man pointed at a dirt track ahead. I paid him, shouldered my pack, and set foot on that familiar yet strange road. On either side were stubbled rice paddies, with tufts of wild grass on the ridges glistening faintly with frost. I walked for more than 10 minutes, my steps uneven on the soft ground, circling a small pond until finally, the outlines of tiled houses emerged in the morning haze. A low stone wall surrounded the yard, its weathered wooden gate left slightly ajar. When I pushed it, the hinges gave a long, creaking groan, like greeting a master returned after years away. The little courtyard was empty, only a pile of rotting farm tools in the corner and dry leaves scattered across the ground. Directly facing the gate stood 3 tiled houses, roof tiles broken in places, window panes coated with dust, reflecting a gray-white sky. This was the old house my parents had left behind. It stood silently, worn by years, yet carrying the heavy, rooted sense of belonging. I set my pack down and stood in the center of the yard, letting my eyes wander. The old persimmon tree in the corner was still there, its leaves gone. Only a few red fruits hung stubbornly on the branches like tiny lanterns. The iron handle of the water pump beneath it was rusted through. A near-bitter warmth welled up in my chest. I was back, truly back. The days that followed felt like someone had pressed slow motion. Life became simple, tangible, filled with the breath of soil and sunlight. The first task was cleaning. The broom swept through layers of dust and fallen leaves, raising choking clouds. Bucket after bucket of water was drawn from the well, washing the windows, the chairs and tables, scrubbing away the years of neglect. When sunlight once again streamed into the main room, the whole house seemed to awaken, exuding an old but honest cleanliness. Some sections of plaster had peeled from the walls, exposing the yellow earth beneath. There were leaks in the roof. I bought tar paper and tiles, borrowed a ladder, and clumsily climbed up to patch it. Blisters rose on my palms, and my back ached with strain. Yet looking at the mended roof filled me with a steady satisfaction. Clearing the yard was an even bigger project. The weeds had grown nearly to my knees. I bought a hoe and spent several days hacking them away, loosening the hardened soil. Neighbor Auntie Wu saw me working alone and kindly brought over some vegetable seedlings, green onions, garlic shoots, a few young cabbages just sprouted, and a small bag of radish seeds. "George, it's good you've come back. Good you've come back." Her voice was hearty, her wrinkled face bright with a simple, honest smile. "This house has been empty so long, finally some life in it again. Planting vegetables is good. You'll eat with peace of mind. If you need help, just come to me." "Thank you, Auntie." I accepted the seedlings and seeds, warmth blooming in my chest. Under Auntie Wu's guidance, I opened up a small sunny corner of the yard into a vegetable bed. I learned how to level the soil, dig shallow furrows, gently place the seedlings in, and water them. Watching those tender greens stand upright under the late autumn sun, a strange joy sprouted in me. So this was what it felt like to let life take root and grow. The days slipped by like this. In the morning, I woke not to an alarm clock, but to birdsong outside the window. After a simple breakfast, sometimes I went to the vegetable patch, pulling weeds, watering. Sometimes I'd take a small stool into the yard, sit in the sun with a book, or do nothing at all, simply watching the drifting clouds. In the afternoons, I might carry a makeshift fishing rod to the small river behind the village and sit there for hours. The water was shallow, the fish small. Catching one was a matter of luck, but the waiting itself, wrapped in quiet, was enough. The 5 million check from Sophia had long been cashed, merged with the monthly transfers she'd given me before, and the steady investment returns from my parents' compensation money. All of it had turned into strings of quiet numbers lying in the bank account. Large, but silent. They no longer demanded energy or effort from me, just the occasional glance at the stable reports. They were the solid foundation of my peaceful life now, the reason I could afford to do nothing completely. I even began to calculate. Daily expenses were negligible. Vegetables I grew myself. Occasionally, I bought rice, flour, meat, eggs, water and electricity. The biggest expense might be coal for heating in winter. The money in the account, just the interest alone, was enough for me to live like this for several lifetimes. That knowledge brought a deep, almost lazy sense of security. Occasionally, someone came knocking, usually distant relatives or barely acquainted old friends of my parents. They carried expressions of curiosity and probing, circling around to ask why I had made a fortune in the city only to suddenly come back, or hinting whether I had spare cash or good opportunities to share. I always smiled, poured a cup of coarse tea, and replied casually, "What fortune? I just couldn't make it in the big city. Came back to farm a little, find some peace." Then I'd change the subject, asking about this year's harvest, or which village kid had gotten into university. When they saw me unmoved, the eagerness in their eyes would gradually cool, until they left awkwardly, the courtyard gate shut, cutting off those probing, purposeful visits, and once more the little yard sank into silence. That silence was like a warm cocoon, wrapping me inside it. Time seemed to lose its measure, flowing only with the rising and setting of the sun, the withering and blooming of plants. I thought life would stay this way, like the gentle stream in front of the house, quietly flowing on until the end. Until that evening, the setting sun burned molten gold, igniting the western sky in dazzling brilliance. I had just finished watering the vegetable patch and was crouched at the well, washing my hands. The late autumn water was icy, stinging enough to make me shiver. Suddenly, from outside the gate came the roar of an engine, approaching fast, tearing brutally through the quiet of the little village. The sound was wild, domineering, carrying a sense of modern speed and power utterly at odds with the countryside. It screeched to a halt right outside my weathered wooden gate. Then, bang. Not a knock, but a full-on kick. The force was so strong the whole door shook violently, the hinges groaning in protest, dust showering down from the old boards. I shot upright, forgetting even to shake the water from my hands, staring at the gate in alarm. Who would do this? A neighbor? Impossible. Auntie Wu would call out from half the lane away before visiting. The electric bill collector? Even less likely. Before I could move, another, even heavier bang, smashed the door open. The battered wood slammed against the stone wall, then bounced back to hang crooked in its frame, looking ready to collapse entirely. A figure stormed in, reeking of alcohol, nearly hit by the rebounding door. The sunset fell directly on her, tall, wearing a tailored ivory trench coat of impeccable fabric, with a matching cashmere sweater underneath. Her long hair was slightly curled, dyed a fashionable deep chestnut, makeup flawless, every line of her brows and lips precisely drawn, even in the dusk, but her beautiful, striking face was flushed red, her gaze glazed yet sharp, as though veiled in liquid light, or burning with fire. In her hand swung an expensive-looking handbag, clutched carelessly, swaying with her unsteady steps. The mix of heavy alcohol and an icy, costly perfume hit me head-on. I froze, the blood in my veins turning to ice. My mind went blank for an instant before forcing out a single word: Willow. The Willow before me was almost unrecognizable compared to the thin girl in a faded t-shirt, wiping tables timidly at a restaurant, or the later image of her in a white lab coat, eyes calm and focused in the graduate lab. Time had carved bold strokes into her, shaping her into a dazzling, forceful presence. The only familiar thing was the flame in her eyes, the same stubborn, burning spark as before, but now fiercer, more tangled, harder to read. She steadied herself, her intoxicated yet piercing gaze narrowing as it roamed over me. Her eyes swept across my mud-stained old jacket, my worn work shoes caked in dirt, and finally fixed on my face. That look hooked into my skin, dragging across inch by inch. Hey, she suddenly laughed, her voice hoarse from drink, edged with something sharp. George, it really is you. Tottering forward on a pair of heels far too expensive for the uneven dirt, she closed the distance, the smell of wine and perfume almost choking. Hiding well, aren't you? Made me search hard. She was far too close. The aggressive mix of alcohol and luxury scent filled my lungs. I instinctively stepped back half a pace, frowning. Willow, you've had too much. How did you find this place? Inside, alarm bells blared. Small river village was remote. How had she managed to find me here, so precisely? How I found you? Willow stepped closer, her high heels sinking little pits into the dirt, utterly unconcerned. She lifted her chin, her whole bearing sharp, aggressive. You forgot Auntie Chan, forgot who it was that tipped you off back then, that I was aiming for a guaranteed grad spot, a PhD, that you'd better deal with me before I became a burden. Her voice rose suddenly, dripping with sarcasm and years of pent-up resentment. You think deleting me off WeChat, selling off that shabby restaurant, and vanishing would make you disappear from the world? George, you've underestimated me, and underestimated how long someone you once invested in, only to throw away like trash, can remember you. Her accusations pierced through the calm I'd worked so hard to maintain, sharp as needles. Auntie Chan, that kind-hearted restaurant owner, I had indeed asked her, during Willow's PhD years, to let me know if anything important happened with Willow. Back then, I had sensed the way Willow looked at me was changing, that the gratitude in her eyes carried too much I couldn't bear. I hadn't wanted to become some kind of shackle or crutch in her life, but I never thought Auntie Chan would remember all this, and even less that Willow would trace me here through her. Willow, the past is. I tried to speak, to calm her down, but she cut me off, her voice explosive. The past. She was like a powder keg with its fuse lit, her voice sharp as glass, her eyes shimmering, brimming, on the verge of spilling over. You think one phrase, the past, erases it all? Do you have any idea, after you sent me that message, you deserve a better future? Thank you for helping me revise my thesis, and then deleted me, blocked my calls, sold the shop. Do you know what it was like to stand there, clutching the thesis I perfected for you, staring at an empty storefront like an idiot? Do you know how that felt? Her chest heaved violently, the buttons on her coat straining, one popping loose from her movement. The golden light of the setting sun traced the wetness at the corner of her eye, stubbornly refusing to fall. Beneath the fury was something buried deeper, hurt, grievance, a scar torn open raw again. Faced with her torrent, I faltered. Back then, cutting ties had been my misguided idea of what's best for her. I hadn't wanted her bound by gratitude or anything else, chained to a useless man like me. I truly hadn't considered her feelings, or rather, I had deliberately ignored them. You, what? Willow didn't let me speak. Years of dammed-up emotions came flooding out, fueled by alcohol, unstoppable. George, you're a bastard, a selfish bastard. You help people just to chase that smug little high of investment, watching someone's life shift because of you, then patting yourself on the back and retreating to enjoy your precious freedom. Did you ever think about the people you helped? Did you ever think about whether they wanted that kind of favor from you? Her voice broke, trembling with sobs, her body swaying under the storm of emotion. Her beautiful eyes locked on me, blazing, threatening to burn me alive. Willow, calm down. I reached toward her instinctively, seeing her tottering state. You've had too much. Come inside first. The moment my hand brushed her arm, she jerked violently, like struck by lightning, shoving me off with desperate force. Don't touch me. Her scream tore through the yard. Using the momentum of her shove, She suddenly hurled herself straight at me. Off guard, I staggered backward, my spine slamming hard against the cold stone rim of the well. Pain shot up my back, and she, like a furious, desperate wild creature, threw herself on top of me, clutching my jacket collar with both fists, her breath hot with alcohol blasting across my jaw and neck. Run! Her voice hissed right against my ear, teeth gritted, laced with near-mad stubbornness and a bitterness too thick to dissolve. You sure ran fast back then, didn't you? I finished your thesis, drained every bit of use you had for me, and then, delete, gone. George, you think the world's that cheap? Her body pressed tight against mine, radiating heat, her softness, wrapping me in a haze of alcohol and perfume. I tried to push her off, my hand brushing her shoulder, but she clung tighter, like a vine winding around me. What do you want? Pinned against the stone rim of the well, I couldn't move, my voice dropping low. What do I want? Willow raised her head, her drunken eyes locked on me, her flawless face so close I could feel her breath. Her lips curved into a crooked smile, tinged with intoxication and mischief, but deep in her gaze swirled emotions I couldn't decipher: anger, hurt, and a desperate finality. Debt collection. The words barely left her mouth before her grip yanked down on my collar. At the same time, she rose on tiptoe, and her burning, alcohol-soaked lips crashed into mine. It wasn't a kiss, it was an eruption, an act of release, of branding, a savage claim. Our teeth knocked painfully together, the reek of liquor drowned my breath, my mind went blank, a thunderclap behind my eyes. My body recoiled, instinct screaming to shove her away, but she clung like an octopus, unervingly strong, fueled by reckless abandon. In the struggle, my hand brushed the soft curve of her waist beneath her coat, making her let out a muffled whimper, only to cling tighter still. Her lips had no tenderness, only rough plunder and the desperation of someone staking everything. The sun's last rays sank beneath the horizon. Darkness swallowed the yard, leaving only a dim yellow glow spilling from the main room, casting a faint halo by the door. Harsh breaths tangled with the rustle of clothes, and Willow's muffled, drunken sobs, all too sharp in the silence of the night. The cold stone of the well pressed into my back, while in front of me, her heat and scent burned like fire, ice and flame. The last shred of reason screamed, "Stop this madness." I inhaled sharply, seized her shoulders, and with all my strength shoved her away. Willow staggered back several steps, heels slipping in the dirt, nearly falling. She caught herself against the old persimmon tree, chest heaving, gasping for air. Her lips were swollen from the assault, strands of hair plastered to her damp cheeks, her eyes hazy and unfocused, as if drained of everything. Stunned by her own act, only our ragged breaths echoed in the courtyard, thick with alcohol, tension, and the chill of embarrassment. Willow, you. I wiped my mouth, tasting her lipstick still there, and beneath it a faint trace of blood. My voice was low, laced with anger and helplessness. Are you insane? She leaned against the tree, head tipped back, eyes unfocused as she stared at me for long seconds. Then, without warning, her body slid limply down the trunk until she collapsed onto the cold ground. Her head lolled sideways, out cold. I stood frozen, staring at Willow sprawled beneath the persimmon tree, unconscious. The chill of the well behind me seeped deep into my bones. The night wind stirred fallen leaves, spinning them past her tangled hair. The stench of alcohol spread in the cold air. My head throbbed. Leave her here. The autumn night dew could sicken her badly. Carry her inside. The scene was already twisted enough, and full of peril for tomorrow. I rubbed my throbbing temples, finally letting out a resigned sigh. Bending down, careful not to tug her expensive-looking coat, I slid one arm under her knees, the other supporting her back, and lifted her in a bridal carry. Heavier than she looked, her body was soft, burning hot. Her head lolled weakly against my shoulder, warm breath laced with alcohol tickling my neck. Holding her as steadily as I could, I stepped over scattered branches and carried her into the main room. Inside, only a single incandescent bulb glowed dimly yellow. When I laid her down on my wooden bed with its faded cotton quilt, she let out a faint murmur, frowning as if in discomfort. I straightened, looking at her unconscious face. The once flawless makeup looked smudged under the light, her brows knit tight, long lashes casting restless shadows beneath her eyes, her lips still swollen and red, stripped of her sharpness, her expensive armor of elegance. She somehow looked fragile, achingly familiar, like that girl years ago in the restaurant, pale and trembling after breaking a plate, unsure what to do. The thought flickered, then dissolved into a deeper helplessness. Trouble, endless trouble. I pulled a clean thin blanket over her carelessly. Then I dragged an old wicker chair to the doorway and sat down. The night air poured in through the open doorway, cold and biting. I lit a cigarette. In the haze of smoke, staring at her sleeping form, the future seemed murky, without direction. This night would have no sleep. Willow slept deeply, sometimes letting out soft, muddled murmurs, words indistinct, tinged with grievance. I sat slouched in the chair, smoking one cigarette after another, my mind a jumble. Memories I had locked away came tumbling back at her arrival. The way she had burst into the restaurant, breathless with joy, to tell me she'd secured her graduate spot. The image of her, focused and intent, staying up nights to polish the thesis that mattered far more to my degree than it ever did to me. And the last memory, the hollow relief I'd felt after sending that final message. You deserve a better future. Thank you for helping me with the thesis. Before blocking her everywhere, cutting all ties. How stupid, how cruel. By dawn, the ashtray was crammed with butts. I leaned back, my mind hazy with fatigue, drifting in and out of half-sleep. Then, faint movement. My eyes snapped open. The sky was pale, dawn light slipping through torn window paper. Willow was sitting up. Sometime during the night, the blanket had slid to her waist. She bowed her head, one hand massaging her temple, clearly suffering from the hangover. Her other hand, hesitant, cautiously tugged open the collar of her cashmere sweater, peering inside, sensing my gaze. Her head lifted, our eyes met, colliding. The air froze. Her eyes, hazy with hangover at first, shifted to blank confusion as she registered her surroundings. Then, when her gaze landed on me sitting in the wicker chair at the doorway, cigarette in hand, face drawn with exhaustion, memory surged back like a tidal wave. The color drained from her face, then flushed scarlet, until it settled into a storm of shock, shame, and disbelief. Her glance darted down, sweeping over her clothes, still intact, though wrinkled, before she suddenly tugged her collar open again, peering quickly inside. Then, like burned by fire, she yanked the collar shut, clutching it high against her neck. When her beautiful eyes lifted back to me, they blazed with fury, flames leaping out. George. Her voice was hoarse from the hangover, but sharp, laced with accusation. With the outrage of someone violated. Her trembling finger pointed at her collarbone, though it was hidden beneath the sweater. You, what did you do to me? You hurt me. The dim autumn morning light spilled through the dusty window, broken into fragments on the uneven earthen floor. The air still reeked faintly of last night's alcohol, thick with an indescribable awkwardness that felt almost tangible. Her words, you hurt me, seared through the silence like a brand of hot iron. Her fingers clutched the cashmere collar so tightly her knuckles whitened, as though she meant to strangle the fabric. Her eyes, now brimming with anger and humiliation, nailed me in place. The emotions there tangled, indignation, drunken confusion, and something else deeper, something she herself might not even recognize. I leaned back in the wicker chair. Sleepless fatigue and nicotine throbbed in my temples. Looking at her, the memory of last night, her forcing me against the well, the clash of teeth, the sickly sweet taste of lipstick mingled with blood, came surging back. I drew deep on the cigarette, let the smoke burn through my lungs, and exhaled slowly, pressing down the irritation. What I did to you. My voice rasped with smoke, edged with a calm so absurd it cut. Dr. Lou, perhaps recall who got blind drunk last night, kicked in my door, and then came crashing down on me, biting, clawing. Remember that? My gaze held hers steady, unflinching, then flicked deliberately to her expensive coat, now wrinkled and smudged with dirt. If I had wanted to do something. My tone chilled into mockery. Do you really think you'd be sitting here fully dressed, only feeling sore? I stressed the words feeling sore, letting my eyes briefly drift toward the neckline she clutched so fiercely. Her face flared crimson, the blush spilling down her throat. She was clearly straining to piece together the night, but alcohol had blurred the details. My blunt words struck like cold water, quenching some of her fire, replacing it with shame. She glanced down at her collar again, almost checking for proof, then jerked her head back up. Her stare was still defiant, though it wavered, unsteady. Still, you shouldn't have. She tried to recover her momentum, but her voice cracked, dry and uncertain with the hangover. I was drunk. Can't you tell the words and actions of a drunk don't count? And you just let me. She was twisting it, laying her reckless kiss on me at my feet. Let you. A bitter laugh almost escaped me. I crushed the cigarette out and stood. A sleepless night, mixed with the frustration of being wrongly accused, sharpened my tone. Willow, last night you had the strength of a bull calf. I couldn't push you off if I tried. If it weren't for the fact you were completely wasted, I would have left you in the yard to freeze. You think I wanted to haul you inside? I was more afraid you'd puke all over my bed. I pointed at the old wooden bed and the thin quilt still covering her. And now you wake up and flip the blame on me. My words fired out like bullets, leaving her speechless. She opened her mouth, trying to retort, but the words stuck. Fragments of last night pieced themselves together in her head. The crash of the door, the icy well rim, the faint scent of soap and smoke on me, her own desperate, angry lunges and biting. Her face went red, then pale, then red again, her eyes darting. Finally, she turned away in frustration, refusing to look at me, rubbing her throbbing temple hard as she muttered under her breath, "My head hurts." The atmosphere fell into a strange stalemate. She sat sulking on my bed like a child who'd done wrong but couldn't admit it, massaging her forehead. I leaned against the doorframe, eyeing the gate hanging crooked, half destroyed by her kick. Another problem to fix, another headache. After a long silence, she finally spoke, her voice lower, tinged with reluctant awkwardness. "Is there water?" I sighed, resigned, and headed for the kitchen. I boiled some water in the old aluminum kettle, poured half a mug into an enamel cup, and stirred in a spoonful of honey from a glass jar. Carrying it back, I handed it to her. "Drink, helps with the hangover." Willow glanced at me, hesitated, then took it. Her fingers curled around the cup, warming against the enamel as she sipped the sweet liquid slowly. The warmth slid down her dry throat, easing her a little, though her brow stayed furrowed, whether from headache or turmoil. I couldn't tell. "How did you know I was here?" I sat back in the wicker chair, breaking the silence. That was the question that mattered most. Small River Village was too remote for her, a rising scientist with time as precious as gold, to come all the way here just to settle old grudges. Willow cradled the cup, absently tracing its rim with her finger, her lashes lowered, hiding her eyes. "I told you, Auntie Chan." Her voice was flat. "After you disappeared, I went to her. At first, she wouldn't say, just told me you'd asked her to tell me to focus on school and not to look for you. Later," she paused, weighing her words. "Later I graduated, started working, had some success. I went back to see her again, spent a long time talking. That's when she finally let it slip. She said your hometown was Rising Sun. She didn't know the exact village, but remembered you'd once mentioned Small River Village, and that there was a stream behind it." Her eyes lifted to mine, layered and unreadable. "There's more than one Small River Village in Rising Sun." I checked maps, asked around. It took a lot of time. This month, I had a conference in the neighboring province. Afterward, I rented a car, set the GPS for Rising Sun, and went village by village, asking. Her tone was calm, as though she were stating a simple fact, but the sheer persistence, the effort behind it, was impossible to miss. Was it worth it? I held her gaze, voicing the question buried in me. All this just to settle the score over a deleted contact. "Willow Lu, you're Dr. Lu now. You have a future wide open before you. Prize money in the millions. Why waste your time on someone who left your life years ago?" My tone carried genuine confusion. Back then, I'd cut ties precisely to avoid being her burden, her chain. I'd thought time would wash it all away. Whether it's worth it or not, that's my call. Willow's voice shot up, sharp as a cat whose tail had been stepped on. The calm she'd just regained shattered. She slammed the enamel cup down with a clink, her blazing eyes locking onto me. "George, is that what you think? That your little bit of money, your so-called help, gave me one chance, so you could bow out with grace, and I should be eternally grateful, that I should obediently march along the better future you mapped out, treating you as some symbol to thank forever, and then, never see you again?" Her words came fast, breathless with fury. "You're wrong, dead wrong. You have no idea what that moment meant to me. It wasn't about money. It was the first time I felt this world wasn't just cold, wasn't only exploitation, that someone could reach out without asking anything in return. You pulled me out of the mud, gave me a chance to breathe, to lift my head and see the sky. And then, when I wanted to get closer, to tell you I could be your support, you doused me in ice water. No word, no warning, just disappeared. Who gave you the right to decide what's good for me? Who gave you the right to think your sacrifice is what I wanted?" Her eyes brimmed red again, her voice trembling with suppressed sobs. But this time, the tears didn't fall. She stared me down, unflinching, chest heaving. In her gaze was accusation, hurt, and a trust, a dependence, buried deep and betrayed. Her words pinned me where I stood, speechless. My so-called "for her good," in her mouth, became arrogance, condescension, abandonment. For the first time, I realized how deep a wound my clean, decisive cut had carved into her. Silence pressed down again, broken only by Willow's uneven breathing. Outside, the sky had fully brightened. Voices of early villagers drifted in, roosters crowing in the distance. Time stretched, until the room glowed bright, lighting the dried tear marks on her cheeks and the stubborn set of her jaw. Then, suddenly, she drew a deep breath, as if steeling herself. She wiped her face roughly with her sleeve, then threw off the thin quilt and stood. Her movements were unsteady from the hangover, but she straightened quickly. She didn't look at me again. She walked straight to the door. Her heels bit into the dirt floor, leaving sharp prints. At the old persimmon tree, she bent, picked up her expensive handbag from where she'd tossed it the night before, brushed the dust off. I thought she was leaving. Relief washed through me, though the crooked, broken door reminded me this mess wasn't over. But Willow, bag in hand, didn't head for the gate. Instead, she turned, and with the decisive click of heels, strode into the small room beside the hall, my bedroom and study. "Hey, you." The words burst from me before I could stop them. Willow ignored me completely. She stood in the doorway, surveying it, the narrow single bed, the battered desk cluttered with books and odds and ends, my hiking pack shoved into the corner. The room was cramped, plain. She wrinkled her nose, clear distaste in her expression. Then she did something that froze me solid. She tossed her handbag onto the desk with a thud, and then she began unbuttoning her coat. "Willow, what are you doing?" I lunged forward, my voice cracking, but her fingers were quick, and the buttons of the coat came undone one by one. She slipped off the expensive ivory trench coat, draped it casually over the chair by the desk, and revealed the equally fine cashmere sweater beneath. Then, as if she were in her own home, she looked around, searching for something, got a clean towel, and a toothbrush. Finally, her eyes flicked to me, tone so natural it was like she was talking to a hotel receptionist. "I reek of alcohol. Feels disgusting. I need a shower." She even raised her sleeve to her nose, sniffed, and wrinkled her nose in distaste. I was dumbstruck. "A shower? You want to shower here?" I could hardly believe my ears. "Willow, do you even realize whose house this is?" "Anne." I jabbed a finger toward the broken gate in the courtyard. "You kicked my damn door down. Pack up, I'll get someone to take you back to town. Or to the city. Find yourself a hotel. The door's broken." Willow arched a brow, as if only now noticing. She strolled to the hall entrance, glanced at the sad, crooked wood, and commented breezily, "Oh, guess I kicked too hard. How much? I'll pay you." With that, she reached into the luxury handbag she dumped on my desk and pulled out a bulging designer wallet, thick with cash. She held it up, eyes meeting mine with a kind of calm assurance, like any problem money could fix wasn't a real problem. And beneath that, was that a hint of provocation? "Name your price. It's not about money." My temples throbbed again, anger rising fast. "Willow, what the hell do you want? Last night's drunken scene wasn't enough. This is the countryside, not your lab, not some 5-star hotel. No water heater here. If you want to bathe, you boil water and use a bucket, and there's only one room fit to sleep in. Oh, boil water. Then please do that." She ignored my rant entirely, seizing only on the boil water part. "Where's the bucket?" "Oh, the red plastic one in the yard." "Right, looks decent." And she actually walked off toward the courtyard, heels clicking, heading straight for the battered red bucket I usually use to water the vegetables. I watched, dumbfounded, as she, clad in a cashmere sweater and designer heels, crouched to grab that mud-stained bucket. The sight was so absurd it made my chest tighten. I strode over in a few steps and yanked it out of her hands. "Willow." My voice came out low, ground between clenched teeth. "Enough. Damn it, I give up. I was wrong back then. Okay, I shouldn't have ghosted you. I'm sorry, seriously, sincerely, I'm sorry. There. Happy, let it go. Take your wallet, your rental car, and get back to your life." But Willow, robbed of the bucket, wasn't angry. Instead, she straightened, brushed off imaginary dust from her hands, and looked at me. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, shallow, but layered, not gloating, but sly, like a trap just sprung. An apology. She tilted her head slightly, as if examining a curious object. "George, do you really think I traveled all this way, kicked down your door, just to hear you mumble a half-hearted sorry?" She stepped closer. The stench of alcohol had faded, replaced by her own clean, resilient scent that lingered in the air. Her gaze was sharp, unwavering, as though it could cut straight through the flimsy calm I tried to hold onto. "Let me tell you something." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried a cutting force that brooked no doubt. "Whatever happened last night, whether you admit it or not, it happened." Her fingertip, through the cashmere sweater, tapped lightly against her collarbone, the very spot she'd accused me of hurting her when she woke this morning. "This," she said firmly, "is proof." Her tone was like a gavel, decisive, unyielding. Willow, finish what I start, and more importantly, I take responsibility." Her eyes locked onto mine, every word crisp, sharp as a blade. "You once invested in me. Now, it's my turn to take responsibility for you. Take responsibility for me." Her bandit logic stunned me into silence. I couldn't even summon words to fight back. As for living arrangements, she glanced around the shabby courtyard and the old house, her gaze resting briefly on the crooked door. "The door's broken. Perfect. Saves me from kicking it in next time." Then she turned back to me, and though her lips curved into what could almost pass for a gentle smile, her eyes gleamed like a hawk's locking onto prey. "This place, quiet, secluded, good for recovery. And besides," her gaze flicked across the corner of the yard where tender green sprouts had just broken through the soil. Before settling back on me, her smile deepened, resolute, unstoppable. "I quit." Her words were soft, almost casual, like a pebble dropped into still water. But the ripples they sent crashing through me were absurd, deafening. "Quit." Dr. Lou Willow, who had just been leading a major national project, swimming in millions in prize money, with a future blindingly bright. She quit to run here, to this yard without even a water heater, and say she's here to take responsibility for me. I felt like lightning had struck me. My body froze, the red plastic bucket still in my hands, my ears buzzing with the sheer madness of it. What did you just say? My voice came out dry, rasping, like sandpaper grinding on stone. Willow, get a grip. Don't joke about this. People would kill for your job. You think you can just throw it away? I'm perfectly clear. Her expression was unnervingly calm, as though she'd set down a burden that had weighed on her too long. She met my eyes, the fierceness gone, replaced with a stubborn, almost crystalline clarity. Before last night, maybe I hesitated, but when I kicked that door open and saw you standing here, her gaze drifted across the yard, barren yet sprouting life, lingered on my mud-stained jacket, and finally locked with mine. I knew I'd come to the right place, and I made my choice. She stepped closer, closing the distance. The chill of the late autumn morning seemed to lift, burned away by the reckless heat radiating from her. The lab is fine, the projects matter, the money's plenty. Her tone was steady, like reciting facts on a page that no longer belonged to her. But every day, facing those cold machines and endless data, what I thought about wasn't any of that. It was this rundown courtyard. It was the men who once gave me a hot meal, let me study in peace, then ran like a coward and vanished to retire in peace. Her lips tugged into a bitter smile. George, you underestimated the interest your so-called investment yielded in me. It isn't something money can measure. It was a seed, one that grew into a towering tree, its roots binding up my heart. If I don't dig it out, look it in the eye, I'll never truly move forward. So you quit, just to come here? I couldn't begin to understand the logic behind her madness. Willow, you're ruining your own future. Do you even realize what you're doing? My future? Willow suddenly laughed, a laugh laced with mockery, but also an odd kind of freedom. My future is mine to define. I used to claw my way up just to prove myself, to you, to those who looked down on me. Now, I've proved enough. She spread her hands, the gesture careless, reckless. Those tens of millions in prize money, more than enough for me to live in peace a dozen lifetimes over. As for the rest, I want to live differently. For example, right here. She pointed down at the patch of dirt beneath her feet. To settle a few things, and to claim back a few things. Claim back. The stubborn, predatory gleam in her eyes set off alarm bells in my chest. This woman was insane, absolutely insane. When she said, take responsibility, she clearly didn't mean it in any simple sense. No. I slammed the plastic bucket down on the ground, my tone sharp as steel. This place is too small to hold a Buddha like you. The door's broken, I'll find someone to drive you back. I turned, ready to grab my phone. George. Her voice cracked through the air, commanding, undeniable. My steps halted, though I didn't turn around. Try forcing me out. Her tone wasn't loud, but every syllable pierced straight into my ears. I kicked the door down once. I can kick it down again and again. Every time you fix it, I'll break it. Or maybe. Her voice dipped into a sly, dangerous lilt. I could just call Auntie Chan. Tell her I found you. Tell her about last night. You know what I mean. What do you think she'd do? Wouldn't she rush here immediately? But her health isn't good, is it? What if something happened on the way? Willow. I spun around, fury boiling over. You shameless. Learned from you. Willow crossed her arms, watching me with infuriating calm. There was even a hint of innocent amusement tugging at her lips. All's fair in war. Didn't Teacher Wang once tell me, spot the opening, strike without hesitation? Wasn't that your very first lesson to me? Her words cut me to the bone. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Staring at her face, radiating, I'm not leaving no matter what, a crushing sense of helplessness closed in. This woman was 10 times harder to deal with than Sophia. At least Sophia played by rules, by deals. But Willow, once she set her sights on something, she'd cling like hell itself, by any means necessary. What the hell do you want? I ground the words out through clenched teeth. Simple. Willow lifted one finger, her smile blooming, dazzling. First, I'm staying, temporarily. That side room of yours will do. It's a mess, sure, but clean it up, it's livable. That's my storage room. I protested. Exactly, which means it needs cleaning. She dismissed my protest like swatting a fly. Second, I need basics. Fresh sheets and bedding, towels, toothbrush. Oh, and most important, hot water. I need a bath. Now, immediately, right now. She wrinkled her nose, sniffing her sleeve with exaggerated disgust. Her tone turned almost like a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. I'm suffocating in my own stench. Go boil the water. I stared at her, feeling like I was roasting over an open fire. Couldn't kick her out, couldn't shut her up, and now she had Auntie Chan dangling like a blade over my neck. The sheer absurdity of it all, and the sinking dread of being dragged into a whirlpool I couldn't escape, crushed down on me like a mountain. They stood in a stalemate for a few seconds. Willow simply crossed her arms and looked at me with an expression that spelled it out clearly. Go ahead. Drag it out. Let's see who gives in first. In the end, I surrendered. Bending down, I picked up that damned red plastic bucket again and slammed it heavily on the ground out of frustration. Then, without a word, with a darkened face, I walked toward the pile of firewood beside the kitchen. Resigned, I started chopping wood. My movements were rough, wood chips flying everywhere. Watching my furious back as I hacked at the logs, Willow's lips curved into a sly smile of victory. She didn't say anything further but turned away and actually began inspecting that cluttered, small room. Inside were farming tools, old planks, and a few dusty cardboard boxes. She frowned, carefully avoiding the dust on the floor, and started dragging out some obviously useless junk. And so, on that late autumn morning, in the shabby courtyard of Little River Village, an absurd scene unfolded. On one side, a city-bred elite woman in an expensive cashmere sweater and high heels clumsily hauled out piles of scrap metal. On the other side, a man in a worn-out jacket, face dark and gloomy, was gritting his teeth as he swung an axe, venting all his pent-up frustration on the innocent firewood. The thuds of the axe and the scraping sounds of dragged junk intertwined, breaking the stillness of the village. Even the chickens from Aunt Wu's house next door seemed startled, clucking uneasily. Life was being dragged into a brand new orbit by Willow, at a pace George could no longer control. That cluttered little room, under Willow's skilled hands, or rather brute force, was actually cleared out. She despised my creaky old camp bed. With just one phone call to the county, by afternoon, a small truck had arrived, delivering a full set of brand new, ergonomically designed bedding, complete with mattress, linens, and even a simple fabric wardrobe. The delivery guy looked at the shabby courtyard and the confident Willow in her cashmere sweater, his eyes filled with disbelief as if he had stepped into some surreal fantasy. Even more outrageous was the hot water issue. Willow absolutely refused to tolerate the primitive lifestyle of bathing with buckets of mixed hot and cold water. After examining the big wood-fired stove in the kitchen and the hand pump well in the yard, she thought for less than half a day before making another call. The next day, a small construction crew from town showed up. They built a tiny hot water pool in the corner of the kitchen, connected pipes to the big pot on the stove, and installed a hand-pressurized pump at the wellhead. The principle was simple: boil a huge pot of water, let the stove's residual heat keep it warm. When bathing, scoop hot water into the pool and mix it with cold water pumped from the well. Still basic, but at least no more hauling and mixing bucket by bucket. Watching the workers busy at it, I stood in the courtyard, temples throbbing. Money. This was all money. That bedding set, that simple wardrobe, this tiny hot water renovation project. The expenses were enough for me to live comfortably in this small place for several years. Willow, can't you stop being so extravagant? I tried to reason with her. I don't need any of this. I do. Willow was directing the workers to install the pump handle, not even turning her head. Quality of life is a basic human right, and besides, it's my money we're spending. Why are you the one feeling distressed? Finally, she turned around, raised an eyebrow, and smiled. Relax. I won't touch that $5 million retirement money you sold yourself for. Her words almost choked me, my face turning livid as I spun around and went to the vegetable patch to pull weeds in anger. The material transformation was only the beginning. Willow forcefully intruded into every aspect of my life. She despised my cooking, saying it was only fit to feed pigs, and took over the kitchen herself. To my surprise, her cooking skills were quite good, efficient and precise in seasoning, but her standards for ingredients were extremely high. The few little greens just sprouting in my garden didn't even pass her glance. George, the vegetables in this garden are malnourished, stunted, and will definitely taste awful. Hands on her hips like a general inspecting farmland, she criticized my hard work, and the variety is far too limited. Where are the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the lettuce? Plant them all for me. And so, my little vegetable patch entered an unprecedented era of variety improvement and scientific cultivation. Willow somehow managed to get hold of a pile of seeds and seedlings, even a few bags of organic fertilizer. She went as far as printing detailed planting schedules and taping them to the wall of my main room, precisely marking which day to water, which day to fertilize, and when exactly to build trellises. Like a strict overseer, she patrolled the vegetable patch every single day without fail. The moment she caught me slacking off or doing something outside her scientific standards, she would point it out mercilessly. George, this soil isn't dug deep enough. The roots can't spread. You're overwatering. It should be dry and wet alternately. Don't you understand? These seedlings are too close together. Pull two out. Holding my hoe, I watched her crouching by the garden bed, poking at the soil with her pale fingers, looking utterly serious, and all I could feel was the collapse of my worldview. The same Dr. Lou who once designed complex system architectures in top-level labs was now obsessed with directing me in how to grow vegetables. What made it even harder to endure was her daily schedule management. I was used to sleeping late, waking late, enjoying the sun, fishing, living however I pleased. But Willow became a walking alarm clock combined with a drill sergeant. George, it's 7 o'clock, get up. The morning sets the tone for the whole day. George, the sun is just right at noon, take the quilt out to air. George, stop lying around, come walk with me by the river. Life depends on exercise. George, it's 10 o'clock, lights out, staying up late damages your liver. Her constant nagging made my head feel like it was splitting. I felt like an elementary school kid under strict supervision. Resist, pointless. She would fix those bright eyes on me, unblinking, laying out all the arguments, talking about circadian rhythms, health science, longevity, until I finally raised my hands in surrender. Or worse, she would just take direct action, like when I refused to get up. She suddenly yanked off my blanket, letting the late autumn chill shock me awake in an instant. Willow, are you out of your mind? Shivering, I wrapped the quilt tightly around me. What's crazy is you. A healthy routine is the foundation of a long life. She stood with her hands on her hips, completely self-righteous, with a mischievous gleam of triumph on her face. The war between us spread everywhere. Over the layout of the vegetable garden, over what to cook for dinner, over when to go to bed, even over whether or not to prune the old persimmon tree in the courtyard. Any of it could spark an argument, big or small. Her logic was sharp, her words even sharper, refusing to yield an inch. Meanwhile, I was bombarded by both her relentless reasoning and her forceful execution, losing ground again and again, often fuming, yet powerless. And so, life passed day by day in this chaotic, noisy, never-ending back and forth. The late autumn chill grew stronger, but under Willow's scientific management, the vegetable seedlings in the courtyard thrived, radiating an untimely vitality. On the surface, I still resisted, still saw her as a colossal nuisance dropped from the sky, but deep down, something was quietly shifting. For example, when she wore one of my old faded shirts, sleeves rolled up, clumsily waving a hoe, insisting on learning how to build a trellis for the tomatoes, only to end up with mud all over her hands and a streak of dirt across her face. Her messy but earnest look would daze me for a moment, reminding me of that girl long ago, carefully wiping tables in a restaurant. Or, though she often complained about my cooking, whenever I brought home a few small fish or shrimp from the river, she would happily experiment with how to prepare them. The fish soup she made always turned out incredibly delicious. When drinking it, she would squint her eyes like a satisfied cat, sometimes mumbling a casual compliment. The fish is quite fresh. And then, sometimes at night, when I got up for water, I'd notice the light still glowing in her small room. Pushing the door open, I'd find her curled up under the new quilt, laptop on her knees, the screen flickering with complicated charts and lines of code, brows knitted, fully absorbed, completely immersed in another world. At that moment, the bossy, unreasonable Willow of the day would vanish, leaving only Dr. Lou, focused, radiant with intellect. I would quietly retreat, leaving a small night lamp on for her. This contradictory feeling grew stronger and stronger. Annoyed, truly annoyed. It was like a calm pond being forcefully disturbed by a restless, crashing stone. But that same stagnant life also seemed to ripple because of this stone's intrusion. A long-lost sense of being alive, messy and noisy, began quietly sprouting amid the chaos. I deliberately ignored the feeling, still bickering with her every day, trying to drive her away. Until that afternoon, the sky was dark and heavy, with a fine cold rain falling. Perfect weather for curling up inside and sleeping. I was deep under the covers, sound asleep, when I felt someone shaking me. George, wake up, wake up. It was Willow's voice, carrying urgency. Annoyed, I rolled over and pulled the blanket over my head. Don't bother me. Rainy days are made for sleeping. Sleep. Something happened. Her voice rose, sharp and commanding, as she yanked my blanket off in one swift motion. The cold air rushed in, jolting me fully awake. I sat up angrily. Willow, what madness is this now? Look. Ignoring my fury, Willow shoved her phone right in front of my face. On the screen was a local news alert, the headline glaring. Breaking. Massive landslide on Rising Sun County's mountain road to the city. Multiple vehicles buried. Traffic cut off. Rescue underway. My heart dropped instantly. All traces of sleep gone. There were only two roads connecting Rising Sun County to the outside, one longer but safer provincial road, and the other, the closer but treacherous mountain road. And Willow's rental car, it was parked at the village entrance. She'd been talking these past 2 days about going to the city to shop. Your car. The words slipped out, my voice tight. It's fine. It's still at the village entrance, Willow said quickly, her finger swiping the screen as she opened the full article, her face grave. But look at the time. The landslide happened around 2 this afternoon. Aunt Chan, Aunt Chan took the bus to the city at noon today to visit her daughter. That bus goes exactly on that route. Aunt Chan. The name struck me like lightning, shattering all the fog in my head. After my parents died, it was Aunt Chan, a kind-hearted, uneducated woman, who embraced me with her simple warmth, helped me run the restaurant, and gave me a place to cling to when I was lost and helpless. She had always been like half a family member to both Willow and me. The horrific pictures in the news, the rising casualty numbers, poured over me like ice water. Terror clamped down on my chest. Her phone. Call Aunt Chan. My voice cracked, frantic as I fumbled for my phone, fingers trembling. I did. It's off. Completely off. Willow's voice quivered ever so slightly. She had clearly seen the news before me and already tried to reach her. Call her daughter. Now. Forcing myself to stay calm, I hurriedly dug through my contacts, found Luna's number, Aunt Chan's daughter, and dialed. The long, endless ringing stabbed at my nerves with every tone. Hello, George? At last, the call connected. Luna's voice was thick with sobs, full of panic. Luna, where's your mom? She was on that bus. I can't reach her. Not at all. The passenger list isn't out yet. The rescue team says the scene is total chaos. My mom's phone won't go through. On the other end of the line, Luna was already sobbing uncontrollably. Brother George. I'm scared. What should I do? Don't panic, Luna. Don't panic. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to sound steady. We'll come right away. Stay at home. Don't go anywhere. Update us the moment you hear anything. After hanging up, I locked eyes with Willow. In each other's gaze, we saw the same heaviness, the same urgency. Outside, the cold rain poured down. The mountain road remained a mystery, full of danger, but Aunt Chan was there. I'll drive. Without hesitation, Willow spun around and dashed outside, not even bothering to change out of her slippers. Wait. I grabbed her arm. The rain makes the road slippery, and the mountain path must be even more dangerous now. I'll go. You stay here and wait for updates. Aunt Chan had shown me kindness. I couldn't let Willow take the risk. You'll go. Willow yanked her arm free and turned back to glare at me, her eyes sharp as blades. Do you even know how to drive? Do you have a license? Do you know the safest way through that road? Will you help or just get in the way right now? Her rapid-fire questions pinned me in place. She was right. I didn't even have a license. All these years, I'd relied on taxis or trains, never once thinking about driving myself. I know the roads better than you. I have experience. Willow's tone was firm, decisive, leaving no room for doubt. You stay here, keep the phone on, and answer Luna's calls right away, and prepare clean hot water, towels, blankets, in case Aunt Chan is rescued and needs them. She didn't finish the sentence, but we both knew what that "in case" meant. Willow. I stared at her slender but unyielding figure in the cold rain, a swirl of emotions rising in my chest. At that moment, the domineering, unreasonable Willow was gone, leaving only the calm, decisive, fiercely loyal Willow. Stop wasting time. Every second is a life. Without looking back, Willow charged into the downpour, running toward her rented black SUV parked at the village entrance. The rain instantly soaked her hair and shoulders. I stood under the eaves, watching as she swiftly pulled the door open, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The headlights cut through the gray rain like twin beams. With a roar, the car leapt forward, splashing mud and water, and disappeared quickly around the bend of the muddy village road. Cold rain lashed my face, icy to the bone. The courtyard was left with only me, and the relentless sound of the rain. Just moments ago, this place had been noisy, full of clamor and life. Now it was empty and desolate. A wave of fear unlike anything I'd ever felt before, and something else, a deep, aching concern, gripped my chest, not only for Aunt Chan, whose fate was still uncertain, but also for that figure who had thrown herself straight into danger. I spun around, rushing back inside, fumbling to boil water, searching for clean towels and blankets. My movements were clumsy with panic. My mind was a mess, flashes of Willow's resolute figure vanishing into the rain, and Aunt Chan's ever-gentle, smiling face. Time dragged on, each second stretching into eternity. The phone on the table sat motionless, as heavy as a stone. I paced back and forth across the main room, eyes fixed on the window, staring at that muddy road leading to the village entrance, desperately hoping to see headlights pierce the rain at any moment. The rain poured harder. The sky grew darker. Anxiety wrapped around me like a tightening vine. Regret crept in. Why hadn't I stopped her more forcefully? That treacherous mountain road, the downpour, the landslide, any accident could be fatal. Just as I was on the verge of being consumed by dread, the phone screen finally lit up. It was Willow's number. I nearly lunged at it, snatching the phone with trembling hands and swiping to answer. Hello, Willow. How is it? Her voice came through, tired, damp with rain. but steady enough. We found her. Aunt Chan has been found. My heart, which had been lodged in my throat, dropped halfway back into place. Relief so immense I almost lost my balance. How is she? Is she hurt? Luckily, just minor injuries. She's only badly shaken. Willow's voice carried both lingering fear and profound relief. The bus she was on got swept into the roadside ditch by the landslide. The door was jammed shut, and she was trapped inside. The rescue team just pulled her out. Her arms scraped, her ankles twisted, and she's badly shaken. But she's conscious. Thank God, I murmured, leaning against the table for support, my whole body drained of strength, left only with the hollow exhaustion of surviving a nightmare. Did you get everything ready? Willow asked. Yes. Hot water, towels, blankets, it's all ready. Good. We'll arrive at the county hospital ER in about half an hour. Meet us there. Willow's words were brisk, decisive. She seemed to turn to say something to someone nearby before hurriedly ending the call. For a few seconds I stared blankly at the phone's silent screen. Then, like a wound-up spring, I leapt into action. I filled the thermos with boiling hot water, grabbed the clean towels and thick blanket I had prepared, locked the still crooked gate, and dashed into the rain toward the village entrance. Luck was on my side. I managed to flag down a 3-wheeled truck hauling goods to the county. I handed the driver double the fare and begged him to get me to the hospital as fast as possible. Sitting in the jolting, open cargo bed, cold wind and rain lashed against me. I clutched the thermos and blanket tightly, staring out at the blurred, rain-washed fields flying past the window. My heart still unsettled. That torturous hour had felt like a nightmare. And Willow, the one who had charged into danger without hesitation, who calmly found Aunt Chan, arranged everything, her image shattered all the labels I'd stuck on her before: troublesome, unreasonable, crazy. She wasn't crazy, she just knew exactly what she wanted, and in critical moments, possessed courage and responsibility beyond ordinary people. By the time I reached the county hospital ER, the place was in chaos, and then I spotted Willow, sitting on a bench in the hallway. She was soaked through, her hair plastered messily against her pale cheeks. Her once expensive cashmere sweater and pants were covered in mud. One of her slippers was gone, leaving her bare foot pressed against the cold tile floor. She was bent over, carefully wiping the mud from Aunt Chan's face and hands with a towel that was barely clean. Aunt Chan leaned against her, pale, dazed, with bandages around her arm and a swollen ankle. When she saw me, Aunt Chan's tears immediately welled up, her lips trembling. George. Willow. Aunt Chan, it's okay now, you're safe. I rushed over, setting down the thermos and blanket, wrapping her tightly in the thick quilt, and pouring out some hot water to bring to her lips. Drink a little, warm yourself up. It's all thanks to Willow. Aunt Chan's tears streamed freely as she gripped the cup. If it weren't for her, in such a dangerous place, she still rushed in, calling my name. I turned to Willow. She looked up too, her face exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed from rain and tension, but still shining bright. She managed a weak smile at me, said nothing, and lowered her head again, continuing to carefully wipe the dried mud from Aunt Chan's hair with the towel. Her movements were gentle, focused. At that moment, the sharp scent of disinfectant in the air, the surrounding commotion, all of it faded away. There was only this woman before me, soaked, disheveled, but with eyes that still glowed with light. A rush of indescribable heat slammed into my chest, powerful and overwhelming. And then, suddenly, from the entrance of the ER, came the sharp clack of high heels striking the floor, followed by a cold, furious voice, slicing through the fragile calm like ice. George, so you really are here. That voice was like a blade quenched in ice, sharp, cold, carrying a fury suppressed to the extreme, suddenly tearing through the ER hallway's mix of disinfectant, wet mud, and anxious air. I snapped my head up, following the sound. The glass doors of the ER were shoved open violently, slamming against the wall with a dull thud. Sophia stood there, dressed in a perfectly tailored black cashmere coat that made her complexion look even paler. Her long hair pulled back into a flawless knot, revealing a smooth forehead and eyes now blazing with icy fire. Her face bore traces of travel fatigue, but far more present was the dark, storm-laden fury and disbelief. Those eyes, once domineering at negotiation tables, now locked onto me with a sharpness that could carve holes straight through my chest. How was she here? How did she find this place, Rising Sun County Hospital ER, at this exact time? The shock gripped my throat like an icy hand. My arms, holding the blanket, froze midair. My whole body felt pinned in place, as though by a spell. Sophia's gaze stayed on me for a full 3 seconds, so cold and scrutinizing it nearly froze me solid. Then, ever so slowly, her eyes shifted. They swept past Aunt Chan, wrapped in a blanket and still trembling with sobs, and finally fixed on the woman beside me, on Willow, drenched, mud-stained, barefoot on one side, still crouched with a towel in her hands, carefully wiping Aunt Chan's hair. Willow had heard the commotion too and lifted her head. Her face still carried exhaustion and worry, but the instant she saw Sophia, those bloodshot eyes, raw from rain and sleeplessness, hardened instantly, condensing into open, icy vigilance and hostility. She didn't move, maintaining her half-crouch, though her fingers gripped the towel just a little tighter. The two women's gazes collided midair. No sound, but it felt as if invisible sparks were crackling, snapping through the air. On one side, a polished, high-class urban elite radiating chill. On the other, a bedraggled but sharp-eyed, unyielding fallen scholar. The contrast was too stark, too strange. Even the busy medical staff and anxious family members nearby instinctively slowed their movements, throwing curious glances their way. Sophia's lips pressed into a pale, hard line. She looked at Willow, her state, her closeness to me, her bare foot planted on the grimy floor, and the fire in her eyes surged higher, mixed with disgust and a sense of being personally affronted. She advanced, each step marked by the sharp strike of her expensive pointed heels against the terrazzo floor, each click like a war drum pounding in the chest. She stopped just 2 paces away, looking down at me from above, her voice cold enough to drip ice. "George, you really are something." Her tone was quiet, but laced with a grinding chill. "No wonder you ran off so fast. Turns out you'd already lined up your next option, hiding out in this backwater, playing some kind of tragic little hero saving the damsel act." Her gaze cut over Willow's mud-streaked figure and bare foot, and her lips curled into a cruel smirk. "Quite the taste you've got. Walk away from the good life and settle for this rural flavor. What? Serving one rich woman wasn't enough, you needed another country girl to keep you company." "Sophia." The blood surged hot to my head. I cut her off sharply, fury hardening my voice. "Watch your mouth. This isn't the place for your tantrums." "Tantrums?" Sophia let out a sharp, incredulous laugh, her voice rising loud enough to draw more stares. "George, you took my money, ran back here, and now you're fooling around with some shady woman, and I'm the one throwing tantrums." She suddenly thrust her finger at Willow, nearly jabbing it into her nose. "Who is she? When did you two start messing around? Was it back when you were still at my company? Is that why you agreed to the divorce so quickly? Answer me." Her accusations were absurd and venomous, like buckets of sewage hurled in our faces. I was trembling with rage, about to retort, when a calm yet icy voice cut in before me. "Senior." It was Willow. At some point, she had straightened up, soaked through, bedraggled, barefoot on one side, and perhaps still a little shorter than Sophia in her heels, but her spine was straight, her chin lifted just slightly. She didn't look at Sophia. Her gaze rested on me instead, her tone level, as if stating the most ordinary of facts. Yet it carried an invisible, undeniable weight that instantly drowned out Sophia's hysteria. This must be the one, the former wife of George, the woman who, after a failed business, left him on the streets, invested her entire fortune to rescue him, only for him to succeed and then busy himself fooling around with his secretary, and in the end tossed him out like a beggar with $5 million as a payout. President Sophia, isn't it? Willow's voice was clear and steady. Each word fell like a cold stone into water, precise, resounding. She even tilted her head slightly, her expression touched with just the right amount of feigned curiosity. Boom! I could almost feel the air around us explode. The color drained completely from Sophia's face. For the first time, that carefully maintained mask of cold hauteur cracked, revealing raw disbelief. Her eyes widened, pupils contracting, as if someone had stripped away all her coverings in the most humiliating way possible, leaving her naked before everyone. Her lips trembled, the finger still pointing at Willow quivering, but no words came out. The stares from around us grew heavier, more layered, curiosity, whispers, speculation. Willow, however, acted as though she hadn't noticed Sophia's collapse. Her gaze slowly turned toward Sophia, clear yet razor-sharp. She gave her a quick once-over, and the faintest curve touched her lips, a smile subtle, but devastatingly sharp. "So it is." Willow nodded gently, her voice still calm, even tinged with realization. "As expected, clothes do make the person. Wearing a coat worth hundreds of thousands, standing on limited edition heels, you certainly look more dignified than when you couldn't even afford a bowl of noodles at a street stall." That sentence was the final straw that broke the camel's back. "You, what nonsense are you spewing?" Sophia finally found her voice, sharp to the point of breaking, charged with panic and shame. "George, was it you who told her? You actually shared that with this woman? Have you no shame? Why so agitated?" "President Sophia." Willow let out a soft laugh, laced with unhidden scorn. "If you didn't want people to know, you shouldn't have done it. You did it all, so what's there to fear in being called out?" She stepped forward just a little, her bare foot landing on the cold floor, yet as if she were treading on some invisible high ground. Her gaze grew crushingly oppressive, locking onto Sophia, whose face had gone ghostly pale and whose breaths came in ragged gasps. "Now, Let me correct you on a few points. Willow's voice turned cold. First, my relationship with George is none of the business of a so-called ex-wife who tried to buy out love with money and then betrayed him. Second, he isn't using your money to support me. To be precise, she paused, her eyes flicking over me with a hint of declaration. From now, and from here on out, it is I who support him. Turning back to Sophia, her gaze carried a lofty pity laced with merciless ridicule. After all, being bitten back by your own pet wolf, losing company secrets and client resources, and ending up with nothing, no man and no money, that doesn't feel too good, does it? President Sophia, is that why you're so rabid, rushing here like a stray dog without a home, barking at your ex-husband to vent your rage? Each of Willow's words was a dagger, stabbing unerringly into Sophia's rawest, most unspeakable wounds. That secretary, running off with company funds, the crisis that gutted the firm. Everything Sophia had tried to bury, swallow down in shame and secrecy, was dragged out into the light, laid bare with such ruthless clarity by this woman who had suddenly entered the scene. Sophia's body swayed violently. Her complexion turned ashen, like she might faint at any moment. She glared at Willow, eyes burning with venom and disbelief, lips trembling, yet unable to muster a single word in retort. The stares from around us pressed down like needles, pricking into her skin. At last, she swung her head toward me, that look, furious, hateful, disbelieving, and tinged with something she herself would never admit, humiliation, regret. Then, with a sudden turn, she fled. Her high heels stumbled as she nearly ran, bolting out of the ER doors, vanishing quickly into the cold rain and night outside the county hospital. Like a defeated hen, scattering in disgrace, the corridor sank into a strange silence. Only the beeping of machines and the drumming rain outside remained. I stood frozen, heart pounding wildly, my palms slick with cold sweat, watching the direction Sophia had disappeared. My chest churned like a bottle of mixed spices, shame, grim satisfaction, absurdity, and an indescribable hollowness. 2 years of marriage, ending in this farcical, brutally exposed confrontation. Cough. Aunt Chan's weak cough broke the silence. She had clearly been shaken by the scene, her worried eyes shifting between me and Willow. I snapped back to myself, drew in a deep breath, forced my emotions down, and crouched beside her once more. Aunt Chan, it's all right now. Don't be afraid, it's over. Willow crouched down too, picking up the towel again, resuming the gentle task of wiping Aunt Chan's hands. Her profile, under the overhead lights of the hallway, was calm and composed, as though the sharp-tongued, merciless woman who had just eviscerated Sophia had never existed. Only, in that fleeting instant when she lowered her head, I thought I caught the barest curve at the corner of her lips. So subtle it might have been an illusion, yet it carried the sly satisfaction and domineering pride of a small beast guarding what was hers. A nurse pushed a mobile bed over, ready to take Aunt Chan for further examinations. Willow and I helped lift her onto the bed. As we followed the rolling bed down the dimly lit corridor, I walked beside Willow. Her silhouette looked as thin as ever, wet hair clinging to her cheek. I hesitated, then spoke in a low, dry voice. How did you know about her company's problems? And that secretary? Willow didn't turn her head. Her eyes stayed on the bed ahead, her tone as casual as if commenting on the weather. Oh, I checked before coming. Word of her company's trouble is floating around in certain circles. As for that secretary, at last, she glanced at me, her look carrying the weight of a statement too obvious to need asking. For you to have accepted the payout so quickly, what other reason could there be? Except she put a nice solid green hat on you. What else would make sense? I was speechless. She withdrew her gaze, adding faintly, with a natural tone of disdain, terrible taste. Once again, I had no words. Looking at her calm profile, the swirl of complicated feelings inside me suddenly gave way to a sense of absurdity, even helplessness. This woman, how many more things had she, just casually, looked into that I had no idea about? The test results came back soon. Aunt Chan really did only suffer minor injuries and shock. She needed to stay one night for observation. After finishing the admission paperwork and making sure Aunt Chan ate something and fell asleep, it was already deep into the night. At some point, the rain had stopped. The hospital corridors quieted, broken only by the faint footsteps of the night shift nurses. Willow and I walked side by side out of the inpatient building. The icy night wind met us head-on, carrying the freshness and chill of after rain. Willow instinctively wrapped her arms around herself. The soaked cashmere sweater on her body was useless against the cold. I pulled off my own still dry old jacket and held it out to her. Willow froze for a second, glancing at the jacket, then at me. Put it on. Don't catch a cold. My tone came out a bit stiff, awkward. If you get sick, don't expect me to take care of you. Willow looked at me for a few seconds, said nothing, and silently accepted it, draping it over her shoulders. The oversized jacket nearly swallowed her whole, carrying my body heat and the faint scent of tobacco. She tucked her chin into the collar, We walked in silence across the empty hospital courtyard toward the entrance. Her car was still parked there. The streetlights stretched our shadows long, crossing and uncrossing along the ground. "Today, thank you." Staring at the freshly washed pavement ahead, I finally spoke, my voice rough. "Thanks for risking herself to find Aunt Chan, and thanks for standing up for me earlier." Even if her way of doing it was terrifyingly intense. Willow's steps paused for a moment, then continued. After a while, she gave a soft barely audible in the night wind. At the car, she pulled out the keys and unlocked it. Just as she opened the door, she suddenly turned to look at me. The streetlight threw shifting shadows across her face, but her eyes shone bright and sharp. "George," she called my name, her tone more serious than ever before. "Yeah. She's not worthy of you." Willow held my gaze, each word clear and deliberate. "She wasn't before, and she certainly isn't now." I froze, staring at the unwavering seriousness on her face. My heart thudded, as if something had lightly struck it. "So," she paused, lifted her chin just a little, with that familiar, undeniable dominance. "From now on, you're under my watch." Before I could react, she bent down, slid into the driver's seat, and shut the door with a firm bang. The engine roared to life, headlights flaring and casting their glow onto the rain-soaked road ahead. She lowered the window, stuck out half her head, and wore once again that slightly mischievous yet commanding look. "What are you standing there for? Get in the car. Home. You'll freeze to death out there." I stood rooted, staring at the woman in the car, draped in my old jacket, hair still in disarray, yet eyes bright and unwavering, boldly declaring that I now belonged under her watch. The night wind was icy, but deep inside me something burned hot, stirring a strange and surging warmth, almost against my own will. I neither protested nor hesitated. I opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. The car glided smoothly out of the county hospital, merging onto the silent, deserted road. The heater was turned up high, the air thick with the lingering dampness of her clothes and the faint scent of my old jacket. Willow drove with full focus, her profile softened slightly by the weak glow of the dashboard lights. Outside, the post-rain night was heavy and impenetrable, but the twin beams of the headlights cut stubbornly through it, illuminating the road home. I knew then, something had shifted, completely and irreversibly. Maybe it had shifted the moment she kicked open that door. Sophia's farce might have ended, but between Willow and me, this was only the beginning. And the initiative, it no longer rested in my hands. Leaning back in the seat, I closed my eyes, exhaustion flooding me like a tide. But this time, buried within the fatigue was no hollow void, rather, a strange peace, as if acceptance itself had settled in. So be it. The night wind swept across the fields outside, carrying faint echoes of dogs barking in the distance. Time, like the small river behind the village, seemed calm on the surface, yet had already flowed far without notice. In a blink, 5 years had passed. Little River Village hadn't changed much, low-tiled houses, winding dirt roads, the fields cycling through their seasons. And yet, it had changed a lot. The broadband was steadier now. Several families had built 2-story houses. Most of the young still left to work elsewhere, but the old and the children who stayed behind wore smiles that seemed a bit more assured. The greatest change, of course, was in George's courtyard at the east end of the village. That old wooden gate Willow had once kicked down was long gone, replaced by sturdy wrought iron doors of rustic elegance, designed by Willow herself and forged by an old craftsman in town. On the gate hung a small wooden plaque, carved with 2 slightly clumsy characters, Wang Residence, said to be the masterpiece of a little one in the family. The muddy ground in the courtyard had been paved with green bricks. Along one wall stretched the once strictly, scientifically managed, vegetable beds, now expanded, flourishing with tomatoes, cucumbers, beans, lettuce, even 2 rows of strawberries. Beside them stood a grape arbor, lush with leaves in summer and heavy with green and purple fruit. Beneath it, a stone table and stools offered a cool retreat. On the other side, a small flower garden had been cultivated, bursting with roses, hydrangeas, and other blooms whose names I couldn't even tell, all blossoming vibrantly in the sunlight. That old hand-pumped well was still there, polished to a shine, with a retro copper washbasin that Willow had bought sitting beside the stone platform. The 3 old tiled houses had also been completely transformed. The roof had new tiles, the walls had been freshly painted, and the windows replaced with double-glazed aluminum frames, making the rooms bright and warm. Inside, wooden flooring had been laid, running water installed, along with modern kitchen and bathroom facilities. They had even carved out a small study in the corner of the main hall, where 2 top-end computers sat side by side, one for Willow to occasionally handle urgent matters or participate in remote academic discussions, and the other for George to play games and check the stock market. It was now the afternoon. The early summer sunlight filtered through the gaps in the grape arbor, scattering dappled light across the green brick ground. On the stone table sat a pot of freshly brewed jasmine tea, with 2 white porcelain cups steaming gently. Willow was dressed in a comfortable linen cotton home outfit, her hair casually twisted into a bun at the back of her head, with a few loose strands falling along her cheeks. She sat on a stone stool, a slim laptop in front of her, its screen displaying a complex molecular structure. Sometimes she frowned in thought. Sometimes her fingers flew quickly across the keyboard. Fully immersed in the world of academia, the sunlight outlined her focused profile, softening the sharpness of her younger years into the gentle glow of motherhood. Yet the stubborn determination in her expression remained unchanged. George, meanwhile, was sprawled in a rattan lounge chair beside her, wearing the same old t-shirt and shorts. His feet slipped lazily into flip-flops. A tablet rested in his hand, its screen dark, while his half-closed eyes enjoyed the lazy afternoon sun and the cool breeze drifting through the courtyard, almost lulling him to sleep. This kind of idle leisure is the ultimate pursuit of my life. However, the tranquility was soon broken. At a smaller stone table under the grape arbor, a little boy in a tiny vest and shorts, his round head looking like a dumpling, was frowning bitterly over his homework notebook. His small brows furrowed tightly as his chubby fingers gripped a pencil, stabbing at the page while letting out frustrated hums. Sigh. The little dumpling gave a long sigh, his baby-soft voice carrying an exaggerated sorrow far beyond his age. This character is so hard to write. No one paid him any attention. The boy snuck a glance upward, first at his mother absorbed in work, then at his father drifting toward sleep. His little mouth pouted even higher. He put down his pencil and began playing with his eraser, rubbing crumbs all over the place. Ahem. He cleared his throat loudly on purpose. Willow's train of thought was broken. Slightly annoyed, she raised her head, her gaze sliding over the top of her glasses with the sharp scrutiny of a researcher examining a failed experiment. Tom, have you finished your pinyin, Chinese phonetic spelling system? What are you playing at? The little boy named Tom instantly straightened up, pretending to write diligently. I'm writing. It's just that this pinyin letter, it won't stand steady. Willow set down her laptop, stood, and leaned over his workbook. One glance was enough for her brows to knot tightly. On the page, the letter G was written all crooked, like a drunken worm, occupying the wrong space, nearly crawling up into the line above. Tom. Willow's voice shot up, filled with the sternness of someone furious at wasted potential. Where are your eyes? Can't you see the grid? The belly of this G should be round and snug inside the middle square. Its tail must sit firmly in the lower square. What on earth is this? A bean sprout blown over by the wind? Tom shrank his neck under his mother's scolding, mumbling a weak defense. It just won't behave. Won't behave. The pencil is in your hand. Are you controlling it, or is it controlling you? Willow snatched the pencil and swiftly wrote 3 neat, standard G-S in the blank space. Look carefully. Copy it, if you don't write it properly. No ice cream this afternoon. Tom stared at his mother's near-printed perfection, his little face collapsing further. Grudgingly, he picked up his eraser, muttering under his breath, Mom's G is too fat, mine is slimmer. Willow glared in exasperation, but there was nothing she could do with her little rascal playing tricks. The noise had fully woken me up. I yawned, then strolled over at a leisurely pace to join the fun. Peeking at my son's disastrous pinyin work, I couldn't help clicking my tongue. I say, Willow. I leaned against the stone table, my tone tinged with gloating amusement. You're a top scientist with an IQ of over 160. Did the factory forget to install some parameters in your genetic code? How come when it got passed to your son, even pinyin ends up looking like a ghost scribble? Willow instantly turned her fire on me. George, you dare talk? Don't tell me your genes bear no responsibility. All you do is laze around. Have you ever helped your son study once? All you know is how to make sarcastic remarks. I shrugged, utterly unbothered. Hey, I'm providing him with a reverse example, showing him that if you don't study hard, you'll end up like Dad, stuck at home farming and sunbathing. As I spoke, I picked up Tom's workbook, pointed at the wobbly G, and started spouting nonsense with a perfectly serious face. But son, this G of yours, it's very imaginative, abstract, postmodern. You can tell right away it's extraordinary, way more artistic than your mom's factory line standard versions. Tom burst into giggles, immediately finding an ally, and nodded enthusiastically. Exactly, artistic, Daddy understands. Fuming, Willow snatched the workbook and shot me a glare sharp enough to cut. George, if you mess around again, go pull the weeds in the backyard. I raised my hands in surrender. All right, I'll shut up. Teacher Lou, please continue. Carry on. I winked at my son, then flopped back onto my lounge chair to enjoy the show. Willow drew in a deep breath, forcing down her anger, and picked up the pencil again, softening her voice as much as she could. Tom, come on, let mommy teach you again. Look, this curve should go like this. Tom blinked his big eyes, half understanding, Half confused, after 3 rounds of teaching, the little rascal's stubbornly clung to its artistic style. Willow's patience finally snapped. She smacked the pencil down on the table, unleashing the ultimate soul question. Tom, tell me, whose brain did you inherit? Huh? In perfect sync, both my son and I pointed at each other without hesitation. From him, her. Our voices were firm, decisive, and full of unshakable tacit understanding. Tom glanced at his furious mom, then at his dad pretending innocence, and his lips trembled before he burst into tears. Wah. I was picked up from the trash can. Both of us were speechless. Well, that stirred the hornet's nest. Willow scrambled to comfort him, wiping tears, promising ice cream. As for me, I rubbed my nose guiltily and looked up at the sky. The sunlight was warm, grape leaves glowed green, and the garden flowers carried a gentle fragrance. Chaos and clamor, the truest flavor of everyday life. Willow finally managed to calm her tearful son, pushing him back onto the stone stool with a string of unequal treaties, ranging from double ice cream to an extra half-hour of cartoons. Only then did the little guy, still sniffling, pick up his pencil again and launch a new offensive against his workbook. She walked back to her seat, lifted the now lukewarm jasmine tea, took a sip, and let out a long sigh, as though she had just fought a hard battle. Tiny beads of sweat dotted her temples. At some point I had wandered over, holding a palm fan, lazily fanning her with slow, uneven strokes. Willow glanced up at me but said nothing, enjoying the momentary coolness before turning her eyes back to the molecular structures on her laptop screen. Her brows furrowed slightly, as if she had run into a problem. Following her gaze, I looked at the tangled lines and symbols on the screen. To me, they were nothing but gibberish. Stuck again? I asked casually. Willow gave a vague reply, her fingers drumming unconsciously on the table. There's this energy calculation that just won't match up. I've built the model 3 times already. I stayed quiet for a moment, studying her focused yet troubled profile. Then I spoke, my tone as calm as if I were asking what was for dinner. Do you want me to open up another tier of computing power for you from Blue Sky? They just upgraded their server array recently. Willow's tapping fingers froze instantly. Her head snapped up, and her sharp gaze behind the glasses fixed on me, filled with suspicion and disbelief. Blue Sky? How could you possibly have access to Blue Sky's computing power? That's the National Supercomputing Center. I looked away, still leisurely fanning her, my tone perfectly flat. Oh, nothing much. Years ago, when I had too much pocket money, I invested a little here and there, picked up a few points of technical dividend shares. Their board secretary's office gave me an emergency contact channel. I paused, then added, anonymous. Of course. Willow opened her mouth, as if wanting to speak, but not a word came out. She simply stared at me with a gaze that was impossibly complex. Shock, realization. So it was true all along, and even a touch of helpless amusement. In the end, she asked nothing. She just gave me one long look, then lowered her head again, fingers flying over the keyboard. Her voice was calm and professional once more, though laced with the faintest grit of clenched teeth. Send the access codes to my email. Include the verification method for the anonymous channel. I replied lightly, pulling out my phone and starting to operate at an unhurried pace. The courtyard returned to silence, broken only by the clicking of keys, the soft swish of the fan, and the little one's grumbles as he wrestled with his pinion. The sun was warm. Time stretched long. I fanned idly, watching the woman beside me frown in concentration, fully absorbed in her work. Then I looked over at the boy scratching his head, waging war against his homework. That once barren field in my heart had long been filled, overflowing with these noisy, warm, trivial days. Fatten up a sugar mommy and then run away. Who could understand this kind of happiness? Turns out, after running circles, I realized the fattest, most troublesome, yet most impossible to leave one had already kicked the door open herself, barged right in, and boldly declared, from now on, you're mine to manage. So be it. Manage away. I shifted into a more comfortable sprawl, closed my eyes, and savored the drowsy breeze of an early summer afternoon. After all, this life was already set.